The streets of modern Rome hum with life. Tourists snapping pictures of the Colosseum, scooters weaving between fountains and ruins, and the scent of espresso drifting through narrow alleys. But beneath these cobblestones, beneath the laughter and the glow of cafe lights, lies another Rome, silent, vast, and buried in time. Few realize that under their very feet sleep the forgotten emperors of the greatest empire the world has ever known. Their tombs, lost to centuries of chaos and conquest, hold secrets that could rewrite everything we know about imperial power, betrayal, and the very idea of immortality. Our story begins not in the marble halls of the living, but in the cold darkness of the dead. For centuries, historians have celebrated the grandeur of Augustus, the brutality of Nero, and the genius of Hadrian. Yet beyond these familiar names lies a line of rulers erased from public memory. Emperors who vanished not because of age or defeat, but because their successors wanted them erased. To understand how these tombs disappeared, we must first understand the Roman obsession with memory itself. In ancient Rome, to be remembered was to live forever. The Latin phrase memoria aeterna, eternal memory, was carved into temples, statues, and gravestones alike. The Romans believed that as long as one's name was spoken, one's spirit endured. But if your name was forbidden, if it was scratched from monuments and struck from records, then your soul truly died. This punishment had a name: damnatio memoriae, the damnation of memory. And it's this curse that sealed the fate of the hidden tombs. When an emperor fell from grace, whether through tyranny, madness, or betrayal, his monuments were torn down, his portraits smashed, and his burial site often concealed or destroyed. The result? A secret map of vanished graves scattered across Rome. Crypts without names, chambers without light, where emperors once dreamed of eternal glory. Imagine the scene. The year is 211 AD. Emperor Septimius Severus lies on his deathbed, whispering final words to his sons, Caracalla and Geta. He warns them to stay united, to preserve the empire. But the ink on his will has barely dried when blood stains the marble floors. Within months, Caracalla murders his own brother inside the imperial palace. Rome is horrified, yet powerless. Statues of Geta are smashed, his name chiseled from every inscription. His tomb? Hidden. Buried beneath later buildings, its location a mystery to this day. That was the beginning of Rome's vanishing tombs. Centuries later, archaeologists searching the Palatine Hill discovered fragments of imperial sarcophagi beneath later Christian structures. The stones bore faint letters, traces of names once proud, now erased. One bore the symbol of the eagle, the imperial bird, its wings chipped and burned. It was a whisper from a forgotten emperor, lost beneath centuries of dust. But what if these tombs weren't just forgotten? What if they were deliberately hidden? Roman historians like Cassius Dio hinted at burial sites sealed in secret, guarded by loyal soldiers or priestly cults. Some claim that in the final days of the Western Empire, relics of the old gods and imperial treasures were buried together, sealed away from barbarian hands. Others believed the emperors themselves were interred in catacombs beneath pagan temples, far from Christian eyes. Modern technology has only deepened the mystery. In 2015, ground-penetrating radar revealed vast empty chambers beneath the Appian Way, the ancient road lined with tombs and mausoleums. Some of these voids match the size and layout of imperial burial halls, yet no official excavation has dared to open them. The Vatican, mere miles away, has remained silent. But history always finds a way to surface. In a small museum near the Capitoline Hill lies an artifact few visitors notice, a fragment of red porphyry, the rare imperial stone once reserved only for emperors. It's carved with the faint outline of a laurel wreath, the symbol of victory and eternity. Scholars now believe it came from a lost mausoleum, perhaps belonging to one of the emperors condemned to oblivion. Each clue brings us closer to a revelation. The Romans built monuments to be eternal, yet even eternity can crumble. Fires, floods, invasions all played their part in burying Rome's dead. But the deliberate erasure, the conscious hiding, that's what haunts historians most. Because when a civilization as powerful as Rome chooses to hide its kings, it means there's something they didn't want the world to see. As night falls over modern Rome, the city lights shimmer against the Tiber River. Tourists walk past ancient ruins, unaware that just a few meters below lies an empire entombed. Hidden chambers stretch beneath villas, forgotten tunnels snake under basilicas, and marble sarcophagi rest in darkness. Some hold emperors, others impostors, but all share one thing: silence. And perhaps that silence is finally ready to break. Because new evidence, long buried in forgotten archives, is emerging. Letters between 18th century explorers speak of imperial coffins found beneath the baths of Caracalla. Another document describes a sealed vault discovered during construction near the Via Labicana, where workers fled after hearing what they described as whispering air escaping from a crack in the stone. Superstition? Perhaps. But in Rome, every legend carries a trace of truth. Our journey into the hidden tombs is not just a descent into the earth, it's a descent into the psychology of power, fear, and legacy. For the emperors of Rome, death was never the end. It was a stage, a chance to display divine glory even in decay. But when that glory turned to shame, when their names became curses, their graves became secrets. Somewhere beneath the eternal city, their shadows still linger, waiting to be found. And as we peel back the layers of history, we begin to realize the tombs of the forgotten emperors are not just stories of the dead, they are mirrors reflecting the living, reminding us that every empire, no matter how mighty, eventually buries its own truth.
Centuries after the fall of the empire, whispers of lost imperial tombs never truly vanished. Travelers spoke of sealed chambers under ruined temples, of mosaics glimpsed through cracks in stone, of corridors that seemed to breathe. But it wasn't until the Renaissance that curiosity turned into obsession. Rome was being reborn, its artists, architects, and popes scavenging marble and bronze from ancient ruins to build new wonders. Yet for every stone they lifted, they uncovered traces of something deeper, stranger. In 1458, a work crew restoring a villa near the Aventine Hill broke through the floor and discovered a narrow staircase spiraling downward. At the bottom was a circular room, perfectly preserved, lined with niches and faded frescoes of winged figures holding torches. In the center stood a massive sarcophagus carved from black basalt. The inscription had been violently scratched away. The workers sealed it back up, fearing a curse, and the discovery was forgotten until a priest wrote about it in his private journal, describing the eerie stillness of the air, as if the chamber itself were holding its breath. That journal resurfaced 5 centuries later. Today, historians believe the Aventine tomb may belong to Emperor Aurelian, the warrior ruler who restored Rome's power after its darkest years. He built the Aurelian walls, the great fortifications that still encircle the city, and declared himself the restorer of the world. But his end was sudden, betrayed by his own generals. The records of his burial vanished almost overnight. For years, scholars thought his remains lost. But the journal's description of black basalt, imperial frescoes, and erased inscriptions matches everything we know about how emperors who fell from grace were buried, with honor erased, but power intact. And yet Aurelian is only one of many. As the empire's light dimmed, Rome itself began to change. Pagan temples became churches. Statues of emperors were recast as saints. Whole mausoleums were converted into chapels or storage vaults, their imperial residence forgotten under altars. Beneath the Basilica of San Sebastiano, archaeologists found evidence of older tombs, massive stone chambers with fragments of purple porphyry sarcophagi. Some still bore gold leaf patterns, and one had a faint carving of an eagle above a laurel crown. It was unmistakably imperial. But whose grave had been hidden beneath a Christian shrine? No record survives. For the Catholic Church, such discoveries posed a problem. The early church fought to distance itself from the pagan world, yet beneath its foundations lay the literal remains of it. Admitting that emperors, some of them persecutors of Christians, rested under sacred ground was inconvenient at best, scandalous at worst. So these tombs were quietly sealed again. Priests claimed they were pagan catacombs or symbolic relics. Excavations stopped. The silence deepened. But history refuses to stay buried. In 1929, when engineers began work on modern sewer systems under the Esquiline Hill, they unearthed marble fragments covered in Latin inscriptions. Among them was a piece that read Divus Flavius, meaning the divine Flavius. The Flavian dynasty, which gave Rome emperors like Vespasian and Titus, was thought to have been buried in a mausoleum long lost. This fragment, if genuine, was a clue that their tombs might lie beneath the very neighborhoods of modern Rome. But within days, the site was sealed by municipal order. Officially, it was for safety. Unofficially, rumors spread that the Vatican intervened to stop further digging. It's easy to dismiss such stories as conspiracy, yet the more you explore Rome's layers, the harder it becomes to separate myth from deliberate concealment. The Roman Empire may have fallen, but its ghost still rules its capital. Every time a subway tunnel is dug, ancient bones appear. Every new construction project risks awakening the past. And so a silent agreement exists between archaeologists and the city. Some things are better left undisturbed. But not everyone agrees. In 2008, an independent explorer named Luca Rinaldi began a private investigation into the lost imperial burials. Using old Renaissance maps, he traced forgotten catacombs under the Appian Way, areas never officially excavated. After months of searching, he discovered a narrow passage sealed behind a collapsed wall. It led to a series of chambers filled with broken statues, fragments of frescoes, and a single marble pedestal carved with a serpent coiled around a globe. The inscription was barely visible, but two letters could be read: A.S. Rinaldi believed he had found the resting place of Emperor Antoninus Pinus, the philosopher-ruler whose reign marked the empire's last true peace. But when he tried to publish his findings, the site was mysteriously closed, his research confiscated by the Cultural Ministry. Official statements claimed he had misidentified the location, yet photographs taken before the closure show something extraordinary: the faint outline of an imperial diadem carved into the wall, exactly the symbol reserved for the emperor's burial chambers. These discoveries raise a troubling question. Why are Rome's forgotten emperors still being silenced? Some historians argue it's not politics, but preservation, that revealing every tomb could invite looting or damage. Others whisper that the church fears the power these tombs still hold. Not mystical power, but symbolic, because each hidden grave tells a story Rome tried to erase, a reminder that even divine rulers can be buried by history. But there's another possibility, darker and stranger. Ancient Roman cults, like those of Mithras and the Sol Invictus, believed the emperor was not merely mortal, but the earthly vessel of the sun itself. When these cults fell out of favor, their followers went underground. Literally. Some texts from the 4th century described secret solar burials, where emperors were interred in alignment with celestial patterns, designed to ensure their spirits would rise again with the dawn. If true, the tombs weren't lost. They were hidden by design, part of a spiritual map spanning the city. Astronomers studying satellite data noticed something curious. Several known imperial mausoleums,
Augustus, Hadrian, and the Mausoleum of Helena align along an arc that follows the sunrise on the solstice. If the same pattern continues, it intersects with several unexcavated zones beneath modern Rome, precisely where legends place the lost imperial tombs of emperors like Aurelian or Caracalla. Coincidence or ancient intention? The pattern is too deliberate to ignore. And as modern technology advances, Rome's underground secrets are being exposed one scan at a time. Thermal imaging, radar, and laser mapping reveal voids where no records exist. Each discovery rewrites a chapter of imperial history, forcing us to confront an uncomfortable truth. We never truly knew where Rome ended. Because Rome never ended, it simply moved below.
Imagine walking through the Roman Forum at night. The marble ruins glow under soft light, the air thick with the hum of traffic and ancient whispers. Beneath the surface, meters below the paving stones, lies another world. A labyrinth of sealed corridors, collapsed vaults, and hollow spaces that once echoed with the prayers of emperors seeking eternal peace. It's here, in this buried world, that the story of the forgotten tombs grows darker. Because Rome's hidden graves weren't merely lost through time, they were buried by fear. In the 5th century, as barbarian tribes approached the city, the last guardians of Rome's imperial cult made a desperate choice. They sealed the resting places of the emperors, hiding their treasures in remains in the hope they would be preserved for a future Rome that never came. They melted gold into the walls, replaced real sarcophagi with decoys, and buried maps encoded in mosaics or carved into temple floors. These were not acts of superstition, but of strategy, to protect the memory of empire from the chaos of collapse. When the Goths entered Rome in 410 AD, led by Alaric, they sacked the city, but found little of what legend promised. They looted palaces and temples, yet the imperial tombs remained untouched. Chronicles say Alaric's men searched for them for days, following rumors of a city beneath the city. They never found it. Ironically, when Alaric himself died later that same year, his followers built him a secret tomb, diverting a river to bury him beneath its bed, then killing every worker who helped. In death, the barbarian king imitated the very emperors he had destroyed. Centuries passed. Rome decayed, rebuilt, and decayed again. The empire splintered into memory. Yet, the stories persisted, passed down by monks, travelers, and thieves. One medieval legend tells of a golden chamber discovered by shepherds on the slopes of the Palatine Hill. Inside, they claimed, was a throne of marble surrounded by statues of sleeping men in armor. The air was heavy and cold, and at the center lay a sealed bronze coffin engraved with Latin words, Noli me tangere, do not touch me. The shepherds fled, and when they returned, the chamber had collapsed. For centuries, no one knew whether the tale was myth or memory, until 1892, when an excavation uncovered traces of a collapsed chamber near the same area. The soil contained fragments of gilded armor and a single bronze hinge, part of a coffin clasp. The inscription, though incomplete, bore the same haunting phrase, tangere. So who lay in the golden chamber? Some scholars point to Emperor Commodus, the mad son of Marcus Aurelius, who styled himself as a living god and gladiator. After his assassination, his memory was condemned, his statues destroyed, his burial site erased. But his family tomb was known to be on the Palatine Hill, the very location where the legend began. Could this chamber have been his? If so, it would mean his remains were secretly preserved by loyalists who defied the Senate's decree. The idea of hidden loyalty runs deep in Roman culture.
Even after an emperor's fall, there were always those who believed in his divinity, who whispered prayers to his ghost. These secret cults formed small cults, gathering in catacombs to light lamps and chant forbidden hymns. To them, the emperor was not dead, only sleeping, waiting to return when Rome needed him most. And perhaps it's that belief that kept the tombs from being fully forgotten. One of the most haunting discoveries supporting this idea came in 1963 when workers restoring a church near the baths of Diocletian uncovered a stone staircase leading to a sealed crypt. Inside were fragments of frescoes showing a crowned figure ascending toward the sun, his body wrapped in golden bands. The art style was late imperial, yet overlaid with Christian symbols, as if two faiths had collided on the same wall. Experts dated it to the 5th century, long after the fall of pagan Rome. The church quickly sealed the site, citing structural danger. But before it was closed, photographs were taken. One shows an inscription, barely legible, Sol revertutur, the sun shall return. To believers in the old cults, this was prophecy. And yet, for all these clues, the physical tombs remain elusive. Why? Perhaps because the hidden emperors were never buried in one place at all. Roman records speak of cenotaphs, symbolic tombs built to house the spirit, while the body was buried elsewhere, in secret. A decoy for the living, a sanctuary for the dead. It's possible that each emperor condemned by history has two graves, one public, one hidden, one for memory, one for oblivion. Recent excavations have even revealed evidence of this duality. In 2017, a research team found a small underground chamber near the mausoleum of Helena. It contained fragments of a statue base with the name Maxentius, the emperor defeated by Constantine at the Milvian Bridge. History says his body was thrown into the Tiber, denied burial. Yet here, beneath his enemy's mother's tomb, was his name, carved in defiance. Coincidence? Or a secret act of preservation? The idea that the victors secretly preserved the vanquished may sound impossible, but in Rome, power was theater. Even enemies could be immortalized provided their story served a purpose. By hiding the tombs of condemned emperors, their successors controlled the narrative. They could erase, rewrite, or even resurrect history as needed. The empire might fall, but its myths would endure, reshaped to fit the times. And so, the forgotten tombs became more than graves. They became time capsules, containers not only of bones, but of secrets. Political secrets, religious secrets, perhaps even treasures meant to protect the empire's legacy. The poet Claudian once wrote that Rome's greatness was buried but breathing. He wasn't wrong. Every discovery beneath the city reminds us that Rome's power was not just in what it built, but in what it chose to hide. As archaeologists continue to map the city's underworld, they face an eerie pattern. Many tunnels end abruptly, blocked by thick walls of ancient concrete known as opus caementicum. Behind them, radar shows empty spaces, perfectly rectangular, untouched for millennia. When teams request permission to excavate, approval is slow or never comes. The official explanation: safety risks. But some believe these are the final barriers between the living city and its imperial dead. The irony is almost poetic. The emperors who once ruled the known world, whose faces adorned coins and whose decrees shaped continents, now lie forgotten, buried beneath supermarkets, churches, and traffic lights. Yet in their silence, they command more mystery than ever. Because the deeper we dig, the clearer it becomes. Rome's story isn't finished. It's waiting. And somewhere in the darkness below, marble eyes may still stare upward as the empire above them carries on, unaware of the power still sleeping beneath its streets.
If the ruins above ground tell us what Rome built, the earth below tells us what Rome tried to forget. For centuries, the city has lived in layers, each new civilization paving over the bones of the last. Beneath every church lies a pagan temple. Beneath every modern street, the traces of imperial processions. But beneath those, deeper still, lie the unmarked tombs of rulers who once claimed to be gods. Modern archaeologists call this the vertical city, but to historians of empire, it's more than geology. It's psychology. Rome never destroyed its past. It buried it. Take the case of Emperor Elagabalus, one of Rome's most scandalous rulers. He was young, eccentric, and dangerously unpredictable. He replaced Jupiter, the father of gods, with a black meteorite from Syria and demanded Rome worship it. He married a Vestal virgin, held lavish banquets where guests drowned in rose petals, and forced senators to kneel before him as the living sun. When the Praetorian Guard finally had enough, they dragged him through the streets and threw his body into the Tiber River. His tomb, like his name, was erased. But centuries later, in 1910, excavators near the river's edge found fragments of an elaborate marble coffin decorated with solar symbols, the rays of the sun radiating outward in a spiral. There was no inscription, only a carving of the black stone Elagabalus had worshipped. The find was quietly archived, never displayed. To this day, no one officially connects it to him, but among scholars, the whispers persist. The river gave him back. Stories like this suggest that even when Rome tried to erase, it couldn't fully succeed. Its emperors were too deeply woven into the city's fabric. Their ghosts haunted its stones. And sometimes those ghosts returned in ways no one expected. In the 17th century, a group of monks digging a wine cellar beneath their monastery stumbled upon a sealed doorway. Inside was a vaulted room filled with sarcophagi stacked like silent sentinels. Each bore traces of gold leaf and Latin inscriptions referring to the divine sons of Rome. But when the monks reported their discovery, church officials ordered the entrance sealed and the records destroyed. The monastery was later converted into housing, and the site vanished from maps. Only a single surviving document, an unsigned letter preserved in the Vatican archives, mentions it. We have found the kings beneath the city, sleeping still. For modern researchers, such fragments are both tantalizing and frustrating. Rome's underground is a labyrinth of secrets, yet every attempt to map it leads to new mysteries. The catacombs of St. Domitilla alone stretch over 12 miles, and many tunnels remain unexplored. Some passages are bricked over with ancient mortar that no one dares break. Engineers who have surveyed these areas using radar describe vast empty halls far larger than any Christian catacombs should be, halls that could easily fit an imperial mausoleum. But the question is, whose? The clues grow stranger the deeper we go. Beneath the baths of Trajan, a team of Italian geologists detected a hollow space shaped like a perfect rotunda, 50 feet across with radiating corridors. Its structure mirrors the mausoleum of Augustus, the resting place of Rome's first emperor, yet no record exists of any other imperial tomb being built there. Could it be a forgotten prototype, or perhaps the hidden resting place of a later emperor who wished to be buried in imitation of Augustus but denied the honor by history? If so, that emperor might have been Domitian, the paranoid ruler who built grand palaces and ruled with terror. His reign ended in assassination, and the Senate ordered his memory condemned. All statues were destroyed, and his name was erased from every monument. Historians long assumed his body was cremated and dumped in secret, but an 18th century manuscript discovered in a Florentine library tells another story. It describes a grand vault beneath the old palace, guarded by marble lions and sealed with lead, where the last Caesar of cruelty lies. Scholars dismissed it as fiction until recent radar scans revealed precisely such a sealed vault beneath what is now the Piazza Venezia. Coincidence or evidence that the last emperor of Rome's Flavian line still sleeps below the heart of the modern city? Every discovery adds another thread to the tapestry of this mystery, And yet, the deeper we dig, the more we realize that perhaps these emperors were not buried simply for honor or protection, but for punishment. In Roman belief, burial was a sacred act that tied the dead to the land, but to deny a proper burial was to curse a soul to eternal unrest. By sealing these emperors away, neither honored nor erased, neither burned nor buried, their successors may have condemned them to a kind of spiritual imprisonment. Their tombs became prisons of the afterlife. That may explain the eerie atmosphere reported by many explorers who have entered these lower chambers. Strange temperature drops, the smell of burning oil where no lamps exist, the faint sound of dripping water in places bone dry for centuries. Rational minds say it's natural decay, echoes of air, the city settling. But those who have been there often describe the same feeling, a weight, as if the walls themselves remember. One explorer wrote in his diary, "I have been to the heart of the empire, and it is still beating." Today, Rome's authorities maintain strict control over underground excavations. Officially, it's about preservation. Unofficially, some suspect it's about control, because every tomb uncovered forces Rome to confront parts of its history it would rather leave buried. Emperors who rolled with madness, faiths that challenged the church, and secrets that could rewrite how we see the transition from empire to Christendom. And perhaps that's why so much remains hidden. Because these tombs don't just hold bones, they hold inconvenient truths. The boundary between myth and memory blurs further when you realize that many of Rome's greatest Christian relics, the bones of saints, the remains of martyrs, were found in the same catacombs where imperial symbols still linger. Sometimes the two overlap entirely. In one chamber beneath the Via Latina, archaeologists found a fresco of Christ alongside an image of a crowned emperor ascending into light. Pagan and Christian, side by side. It's as if Rome's spiritual evolution didn't erase the old gods, but merged with them. Perhaps the hidden tombs tell us not of emperors defeated, but of transformation. Because in burying their rulers, the Romans were not just concealing their past, they were planting it, like seeds, to be rediscovered when the world was ready to understand what empire truly means. And now, centuries later, as we dig through the layers of that buried world, we may be closer than ever to understanding.
In every age, Rome has been a city haunted by itself. The people who walk its streets may think they are living in the present, but every echo under their feet comes from the empire that never truly died. The Forum, the Colosseum, the Pantheon, each is a scar and a memory. Yet the greatest remnants of Rome are not the monuments we see, but the ones we cannot. The buried tombs of emperors whose names have faded from marble, whose stories were swallowed by time, and whose ghosts still seem to stir the dust beneath the eternal city. When we speak of forgotten emperors, we imagine obscurity, but these rulers were once gods in flesh. Crowds shouted their names, soldiers pledged oaths in their honor, and entire cities trembled at their decrees. How could such men vanish so completely? The answer, as always in Rome, lies in control. Power in life meant control over others. Power in death meant control over memory. And memory is what the empire learned to weaponize. Think of Nero, the mad emperor who supposedly played music while Rome burned. After his suicide, the Senate condemned his name, yet decades later, impostors arose across the provinces claiming to be his reincarnation. Even after death, his myth refused to die. The people whispered that Nero would return to reclaim the empire. Fearing this, his successors buried or destroyed any trace of his tomb, but rumors persisted that he was secretly interred under the Pincian Hill, an unmarked grave near the modern Villa Borghese. Excavations in the 20th century found fragments of imperial porphyry there, but nothing more. Perhaps that is fitting, for Nero's greatest monument was never stone, it was legend. The same is true for every ruler whose tomb has been lost. The physical grave may be gone, but the story endures, reshaping itself with each century that digs a little deeper. In recent years, technology has turned myth into map.
High-resolution radar scans beneath the Palatine and Aventine hills reveal networks of geometric voids, perfectly symmetrical, laid out in grids that no natural process could form. Some align precisely with ancient texts describing the subterraneum imperii, the underground of empire. The data suggests that at least 6 large chambers, each about the size of a modern cathedral, remain sealed. Their walls appear lined with marble, their floors hollow, as if concealing secondary crypts below. The discoveries have reignited debate among historians and believers alike. Could these be the collective tombs of emperors erased from the records? And if so, why were they hidden together? One theory suggests that during the chaotic 3rd century, when the empire nearly collapsed, loyal architects created a secret necropolis to protect the legacy of Rome's rulers from invading armies. Another proposes that it was the opposite, a prison built by the Senate to bury those they wanted the world to forget. Perhaps both are true. Perhaps the line between honor and exile became meaningless when power itself was dying. To imagine these tombs is to step into darkness lit only by the glow of imagination. Corridors lined with statues that once stood in triumphal arches, bronze doors engraved with the imperial eagle, urns of gold sealed with wax, and at the center of it all, the sarcophagi of emperors who believed that by shaping the world they could escape mortality. But death, as Rome proved again and again, was the one conqueror they could never defeat. Still, something in us keeps searching. Why do we care where these forgotten rulers lie? Perhaps because finding them means finding a missing piece of ourselves. Rome is more than a city. It's an idea that still shapes how we see power, legacy, and civilization. Every government building modeled on its columns, every court and senate that echoes its name, every monument that seeks eternity owes something to those buried kings. To uncover their resting places is to confront the roots of our own ambition and our fear of being forgotten. There's another reason, too, one that borders on the poetic. The more the world changes, the more we hunger for what feels permanent. In an age of fleeting fame and digital ghosts, the tombs of Rome remind us of a time when immortality was carved in stone. To touch those stones, even for a moment, is to feel that human desire to matter beyond death. Perhaps that is why explorers keep risking the darkness beneath the city. Some are scientists, some dreamers, some driven by faith or obsession, but all chase the same truth, that somewhere down there, the empire still breathes. A few years ago, a group of Italian researchers conducted a night survey beneath the Appian Way. Their sensors picked up rhythmic vibrations deep below the surface, steady, pulse-like tremors that lasted exactly 46 seconds before fading. Seismic activity, said the engineers. But one of the researchers, a historian named Giulia Moretti, wrote later in her field notes, "It felt like the city was remembering." And maybe it was. For memory is what keeps Rome alive. Every empire that followed, Byzantine, Ottoman, British, even modern nations, borrowed from its shadow. The emperors may have been buried, but the idea of empire never was. It continues to rise, fall, and rise again, each time wearing a different face. That is the real secret entombed beneath the streets of Rome, not the bones of kings, but the blueprint of power itself. If the tombs are ever opened, what will we find? Gold? Marble? Bones wrapped in silk? Or something less tangible? The realization that we too are building our own monuments, destined one day to be buried beneath future cities. Maybe the real message of those forgotten emperors is a warning whispered through stone, that glory is temporary, but concealment is eternal. Because even buried in darkness, Rome still rules the imagination of the world. As the camera pans across the night skyline, the domes, the ruins, the flicker of torches from archaeological digs, the narrator's voice softens,